Good afternoon, everybody. Bienvenue à toutes et à tous. Ce sujet aujourd'hui, c'est un sujet très proche de ma cœur. Alors, je suis ravi d'être ici pour discuter avec vous. This is a topic, as I said, that is very close to my heart. So when they asked me on day 3 to do this, I leapt at the opportunity to be part of this because it is that important. A huge thank you to David and to All Tech is Human for being such great partners in this. And that's a partnership that we're going to continue with you as time goes on. And a special shout out too to Peter Lowen, who's down from Toronto and the Monk School to join us here today to do this. You know, when I was preparing with the team to come down here to New York to take up my job as Consul General, I was sort of thinking of the big issues of Canada-US relations. So, you know, trade and innovation, energy, obviously, balloons. But, you know, throughout all of it, throughout all those issues, except maybe balloons, there was one word that sort of connected all of those issues to me, and that single word was democracy, because none of those issues exist in any form that we would recognize without democracy. So it's not just a singular thing that we're trying to focus in on here. It's literally everything that we believe in and what we've been working for. As Sally said, these are issues that I covered up close and personal as a journalist in Canada, in the United States, around the world, in war zones and conflict zones. When I left journalism in 2017, the world was really just then beginning to grapple with the whole notion of technology and what it is doing to our democracy and the way that we interact with one another. You know, I remember the first time I saw it, and trust me, I'm not an early adapter. As Sally said, I'm pretty old. But, you know, in some of the Arab uprisings, it's where I first came across WhatsApp. Why? Because they felt that the encryption service meant that the security services couldn't follow them. They couldn't be surveilled. That was kind of new to me. I thought, well, this is an interesting way of running what they hoped would be a revolution. The other thing is speed and immediacy and what's happening, the whole notion that this is happening so quickly. When I went to Berlin to cover the fall of the Berlin Wall, I arrived literally with 14 cases of equipment. And then when we got the equipment set up, you had to sort of get in line to have it fed out. So what you saw was not seen back where you were sending it to for another 14, 15 hours. When I was in Afghanistan and Iraq, I had one little suitcase and I could go live from anywhere in the desert. That's how quickly things changed in a matter of a couple of years. Today, I'm really looking forward to this conversation among all of you. Your views on how our democratic societies are being impacted by technology, for better or for worse, because it is both. The dialogue between experts in industry, civil society, and government is exactly the type of critical discussion that we need to address these issues. As Consul General of Canada here in New York, appointed directly by the Prime Minister, and the only reason I say that is because I want to reassure you that everything that you say today, every bit of persuasion that you've got is going to be transmitted to the right people in Ottawa as we as a country, as a government, grapple with the idea of how do we then present legislation on this very critical issue. So you today are informing us as a country. And I got to tell you, we really appreciate it. Around the world, we know that everyday citizens are grappling with the spread of vaccine misinformation or disinformation. With the rise of anti-Semitism and other forms of hate speech online, we see that all the time. And of course, ultimately, the polarization of our politics everywhere in democratic societies. But, you know, democracy, as I said earlier, is the absolute bedrock foundation of our societies in the United States and in Canada. But it's not immune to cracks. We all know that. It's not perfect, but it evolves. It is a living organism that we work on every single day, and every single generation has its role in evolving that democracy, making it better. As they say in the United States, forming a more perfect union. The stability of our democratic systems has been undermined, however, by digital authoritarianism, misinformation, and of course, by polarization. Together, we must address the most complex issues and questions of our time. This is our moment to deal with this. What does accountability look like in the face of these new threats to democracy? Look, industry can't solve these problems by themselves. And quite frankly, we shouldn't ask them to, nor should we expect them to. But governments can't solve these issues by themselves either, because policymakers simply don't have all the right answers to lead us to where we need to go. But it is possible that all of you being engaged here in the room and online, in the worlds that you come from, with the backgrounds that you have, you might just have the answers that we're looking for. And that's why we're so delighted that you're here. To safeguard democracy, we need an ecosystem of accountability that includes knowledgeable policymakers, empowered civil society, and informed citizens. We need smart people from diverse backgrounds. Take a look around you. This is exactly what we've got. Smart people from diverse backgrounds to address these threats together. Today, I'm really looking forward to hearing our panelists and address some of the most pressing questions of our time that we face. Here are the questions that intrigue me. What role should democratic governments play in regulating speech online? That's a tough one. How can we ensure that emerging technologies are aligned with the public interest and, in fact, serve the public interest? How do we preserve democracy in the face of rising digital oppression? Those are the big questions. Now, as we work together, these alliances that we're forming won't always be easy. There's going to be tensions between the levels that I've just talked about. That's normal. That's to be expected. We're going to have to navigate that. But navigating that is at the very core of our democratic beliefs and systems. That's how we come to conclusions. I'm not afraid by tensions or by conflict, as long as we're all headed the right way. Tensions between safeguarding free speech and protecting our most vulnerable, for example, from hate speech. But we must take action, and we must take action now. We have no time to lose. As we all know, and I'm telling you stuff that you know better than I do, that if you look around what's happening, the threat is real, the threat is happening now, and solutions are demanded right now. As Consul General in New York for Canada, I can tell you that Canada is committed as a government and as a country to being a partner to civil society, to industry, and to the United States as we address these challenges at home and, in fact, around the world in all democratic countries. At home, the government of Canada launched a Protecting Democracy plan in 2019 to help safeguard our elections. It aimed at enhancing citizen resilience against disinformation, building partnerships to foster a healthy information ecosystem, and working with social media companies to establish a common understanding of their responsibilities in the online space. We're working with communities and companies at home to better understand the collective threats that we face and to develop new tools to respond. Last year, the Government of Canada, through the Canadian Trade Commissioner Service, revamped its responsible business conduct strategy to encourage Canadian tech companies to increase sustainability and to uphold human rights. Now, the argument behind these strategies is pretty simple. Adopting responsible business practices not only helps Canadian companies make the world a better place, have a positive impact, do the right thing, but look, it also helps their global competitiveness, their innovation, and ultimately their bottom line. This is not just a do-gooder thing. This is something that can exist within the ecosystem, economic ecosystem that we have. Internationally, Canada leads the G7 rapid response mechanism to identify and to respond to foreign threats to democracies, including state-sponsored disinformation. which, as we know, is a huge problem. Canada is very, very proud to be a founding member of the Freedom Online Coalition, the only multilateral group dedicated to defending human rights and democracy online. As chair in 2022, Canada worked to advance our vision of digital inclusion built around the 4 pillars, what we identified as the 4 pillars of connectivity, digital literacy, civic participation, and safety. Those are the 4. Now, as we pass the chair to the United States and look to the year ahead, I am very excited to learn more from our fireside chats and about how we can take collective action to ensure that the internet remains global, open, and interoperable. I just want to wrap up by reflecting on some remarks made by our Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, in Washington, D.C. at Brookings last year, speaking about the next era of the international system. She called for a world where liberal democracies cannot just survive, but in fact thrive. A world where we extend a hand to people everywhere who are doing the hard work of building their own democracies, creating their own democracies. The conversations that we're having in this forum today are an important part of that work. They will help guide us as we fortify and strengthen our democracies for the next international era. I'm really looking forward to this day of incredibly rich discussion and debate as we tackle these complex issues about tech and democracy together. Thank you again to Alltech for being a fantastic partner in all of this. Thank you all, both in the room and online, for joining us. I'm going to be fascinated to see what the next couple of hours bring. On behalf of the Canadian government, thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to get in the center here. Let's change it up a little bit. But Council General Clark, thank you, and Salyu, thank you. Canada's been a fabulous partner for us at Alltech as Human. So by way of intro, I'm David Ryan Polgar with the nonprofit Alltech is Human. We're based here in Manhattan. We are focused and committed to strengthening this new nascent responsible tech movement and ecosystem so we can tackle wicked tech and society issues and co-create a tech future aligned with the public interest. Okay, that was a little flowery. That's our elevator pitch. So let's drop that and get real for a minute, right? So last May, we held an event here at the consulate. I remember when I started, and this is the time of a lot of stress, like now with our democracy all across North America and beyond. And I recall saying that every time I worry about the threat of American democracy, I seem to make another Canadian friend. And and while that is a joke, there's also a kernel of truth behind that, right? Because one of the things I always thought about with Alltech is Human, started the organization in 2018, and I remember just being blown away by the fact that this was a scrappy organization when it started, just put out a LinkedIn message, and then to have people flying in from Sweden, all across Europe and across Canada and beyond, and said, well, what's their motivation? Right? Do we have any actors? Raise your hand if you have a previous experience as an actor. Anybody an actor here? Oh, wow, there we go. Well, when you're an actor, they always ask, what's your motivation? Right? What's the engine behind why you do what you do? So likewise, just seeing everybody kind of move heaven and earth to participate, thinking, well, they're not doing it for money. They're not doing it for fame. So what are we doing it for? We're doing it for something important, because what we've realized is that the future of technology is intertwined with the future of democracy and the human condition. We're here not because this is an academic exercise. We're here because what we're doing is important. And we also realize, as Council General Clark mentioned, that this is a pivotal moment. We can feel it, the subterranean kind of level, that there's different pathways that our democracy can go. And as we've seen in countries across the globe, with authoritarianism on the rise, which seems to coincide with the adoption of our digital technologies, and we wonder, how can we change this? Unfortunately, technology does not work like a Ron Popeil infomercial where you can set it and forget it. Democracy is something that is protected in our future with technology, given that it's intertwined with democracy and the human condition, requires what we have in this room. It requires a diverse range of backgrounds, lived experiences, and disciplines to come together, to share ideas. It's one of the things that I've always kind of centered as my North Star, if you will, is that we don't lack for ideas. What we honestly lack for is a multi-stakeholder, multidisciplinary, global, hyper-connected network that actually sources these ideas and sends them to Ottawa, right? And that sends them to all these different stakeholder groups. What usually happens, I know every time I talk to an academic, they're learned, but they tend not to be heavily promotional, which presents an issue where you have knowledge that doesn't get to the lever of power. What we're really doing, drop all the shroud, is what we're really doing is we are rapidly distributing power and ideas across this hyper-connected network. Because frankly, we have 21st century problems, but 20th century models of how we deal with this, and that's falling apart right now. Because the speed of innovation is rapidly exceeding the speed or slowness of our tech consideration. So what we're trying to do today is we're trying to come together to promote knowledge sharing collaboration so we can lower that delta between the two. The gulf between the speed of innovation and the slowness of consideration is what leads to a reactionary stance. How do we become proactive with tech policy? How do we take what everyone is doing in this room, what everyone is doing on the live stream or later on with the video? We're sitting on intelligence, but we're not building on that intelligence. How do we stand on the shoulders of giants, if you will? How do we come together in a manner that informs? However, as we know, this isn't easy. One of the reasons why this is a wicked problem is because similar to civic engagement, similar to democracy, we have different backgrounds. We have different values. We have different desired tech futures. But oftentimes, what I've seen in my own experience, I've been in this space for over a decade. And one of the things that I saw early on is that I got invited to a lot of fancy dinners and working groups. And I said, well, this is great. I love being taken out to dinner. I love being paid to speak. And this is wonderful. This is fun. Feeds the ego, feeds, income. But what it doesn't feed is a sense of purpose and solution. Because oftentimes what I've noticed is people in insulated spaces have levers of power, but oftentimes don't have access to a diverse range of ideas. What we do with All Tech is Human is we're trying to create what we call a grassroots power model that connects those dots, that frankly brings somebody in from World Economic Forum in Aspen with a student and an activist, because they're the future leaders. But oftentimes we don't create space to create thousands more just like us. So that's what we're trying to do. Please stay in touch with our organization. Say hi to my colleagues, Josh and Sandra, who you're going to meet today from All Tech is Human, and then many more who are online with our live stream. Again, I was at an event the other day as I close, and I talked to the person. They said, wow, this is our first gathering since COVID. And I scratched my head and said, my God, I'm getting ready for today. This is our 16th. And I say that in the sense that I'm low on sleep, but high on passion and high on energy. And the reason is because of this. The reason is because anybody who thinks that more people should get involved are just not in the right rooms or not opening the door for more people to enter that room. Look around, talk to one another. There's passion, there's enthusiasm, and there's ideas. There's also disagreement. But what you'll find is that if you go to the subterranean level, we might disagree on the surface. You might look around and say, I hate this person, right? They might be from a field that you say, we don't always get along. We're at loggerheads. But you're here for a reason. You're here for a motivation because the status quo is not sustainable. When democracy is in peril, it motivates you, it motivates me to want to work together to co-create that better tech future and one that's aligned with the public interest. And to do that, we need to understand each other and learn from each other. Thank you.